Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Eric. I make music under the name Shibo. I'm going to talk a little bit about the DSI Sequential Prophet Rev2 today. Thank you for watching. So the first question is, what made me choose the Rev2? When I first started looking into adding an analog synth to my setup, the first synth I heard about was the Prophet 8. At the time, the record Overgrown, the James Blake record Overgrown, had just come out, and I heard he had used it all over that record. Notably, there's that crazy detune chord patch on Retrograde that you know, like when I heard that was a Prophet, I really wanted to get my hands on whatever synth he was using. So the next question is how I'm using the Rev2. I use it on most of the records I make. It's a huge part of the Shibo sound. I've used it on tour. We brought it on tour when I did a tour with Nick Dorian in 2019, and it was a big part of the live setup. And I'd say, like, in the studio, I definitely use it the most on chord and kind of pad patches. That's where I feel like the Prophet really excels. The chord patches, to me, are second to none. There's just a richness you get with Dave Smith and sequential synths that you can't find elsewhere. And to me, an attractive part of the Rev2 in particular was the design, just the ease of use. There's a flow you can get when designing sounds that's really attractive. There's basically all the parameters that you'd want to mess with are right on the front panel. There's very little menu diving. Even for like the deepest level modulation, you don't have to dive into menus to really access that stuff. It's right on the front panel. So that kind of brings us into the next question, which is what the Prophet gives me that other synths don't. And like I mentioned before, I think when all the oscillators' voices are working together, there's a sound quality there that you just can't find with other synths. DSI and Sequential are kind of the kings of the polysynth, in my opinion. Also, having started on a Mofo X4, migrating all of my patches was actually really easy. I was able to take every sound that I made on the Mofo and dump it right into the Prophet, which made for a really seamless transition when I upgraded. So that's a huge plus, especially if you have multiple Dave Smith or sequential boards. It makes it really easy to move patches between them, and they worked perfectly when I moved the patches over. So finally, I just wanted to give you some tips and tricks that I find useful on the Prophet. The first is using the sequencer, the gate sequencer on board. There's actually 4 that you can use as modulation sources. And I find using that can add a lot of movement and create some really interesting patches. So in this particular patch, I'm using one sequencer to modulate the filter envelope, and then I'm using a second one to modulate the filter resonance. So if I increase the release time and add some effects on this, it creates a bigger sense of space and movement in the patch as the tail trails on. Another fun feature included in the Prophet is the chord unison mode. So if I play a chord in, and I've enabled this setting in the settings, hitting the unison button will save that chord. and I can move it up and down the keyboard. Really fun for just like quickly getting a jam going with a patch. Thanks for watching.